we have to liberate the people of the world from like two great adversaries right now, which is woke culture. In many ways, we've become the country that pushes so much evil around the world. And number two, the CCP. We need to liberate the world from the CCP. The CCP must be defeated. And I think those are really kind of the same enemy. They're tied at the hip. So if we can defeat the CCP, we can defeat the woke culture.
What difference can one man make when he gives his yes to God? Well, we have a perfect example of that in our show today as I interview Jason Jones, a true Catholic patriot and a true lover of humanity. He is a faithful Catholic with a very interesting story. He's a convert, and I look forward to looking at those issues that he sees are the most important for our times in ways that we can concretely do them. So let's check out the inspiring story as well as the important call to actions that Jason has for us today on The Catholic Patriot.
The whole world is sick.
Are you worried about America? I am.
Believe the impossible and you can do the incredible.
We have a real great treat today. This is a guest that I've wanted to have on for some time. And he's very hard to get because he is busy literally around the world, traveling and doing things, a lot of things I can't even say. Because, as you know, we live in real precarious times. And, well, let's just say that these are dangerous times. And when you put yourself out there to fight, especially for the vulnerable, then you make yourself an enemy of the evil that we have. So it's my pleasure to welcome to our podcast today, Jason Jones. And Jason joins us all the way from an undisclosed location, I believe, in Texas, Austin, Texas. Great to have you on with us.
Oh, great to be on your show, Doc. No, German Hill Country. I am in. Okay. I do go into Austin from time to time, but I make sure I have a Toyota pickup truck with a 50 caliber machine gun mounted in the back, and you just don't go to Austin anymore.
I know. I don't know how you would call it, but all these cities that we're close to now, like we're just close to Spokane, where we are, northern Idaho, just across the border. It's like not even an hour away, but it's still a different feel when you go to these cities. It's like Spokanistan, like all of these. It is kind of crazy how the country is now. You've come to mind a lot in light of. I was thinking back to when I first met you. This was, I think, 2014 or 2015, and you had just written a book. And I'm going to use this as a little intro into your bio because there's a lot of impressive things behind you. Because Jason, one of the things that he's an author. He's a film producer. He's an activist. He's a human rights worker. He's the founder. He's the president to Movie to Movement. You are probably very familiar with some of his productions. One of them being Bella, that goes all the way back to 2006, and it won an award. It was the People's Choice Award at the Toronto International Film Festival. Big pro-life film, and much, if not everything, actually everything Jason does and is about, as he would say, whole life. We talk about pro-life, but that could, needs a little bit more of a nuance to it. But everything he does is about defending life, promoting life, and especially the vulnerable. One of the other things that he's the founder of is the Vulnerable People Project. And as we go on in our podcast, I'd like Jason to be able to explain more about that, because these are the things that take him all around the world and literally on the front lines. Jason isn't someone who just sits there and talks about the problems that we have, the plights that people have, the injustices that are going on. Jason's actually there. He knows who these people are. He's talking to them. And not only that, he's just involved in helping them to, one, if possible, bring to a region, but also in those areas where people need to get out. Jason's one of those guys who's like, let's find a way to give these people a better life while we work on the bigger problem. So I've always been inspired by Jason's work, and our paths crossed at I think the most unusual of circumstances. We were in Aspen, Colorado, and Jason had just written this book that I reference. It's called The Race to Save Our Century, and he gave a talk at my parish in Aspen, Colorado. I had no idea who this guy was. I was the one who was coordinating events there. I had no idea about the event, and it ended up being for non-Catholics. And yet my wife and I slipped into the back and listened to him. And it seemed like Jason didn't quite know who the crowd was. So he started cracking these jokes, these Catholic jokes. And we were the only ones in the back who were laughing. And the one that really stood out to me, I don't want to get into too much of this because I could forever. I'll never forget it, though, was you describing a situation where I think you were in Sudan or someplace. You're with a good friend of yours, Eduardo, who's in Bella and these other productions. And there was a moment where your life's in danger and you get all worked up. You're like, this could be the moment. This could be it where I'm martyred. And then you have this thought go through your mind of, oh, wait a minute. I'm with Eduardo. For the rest of eternity, it's going to be known as Jason Jones goes down as Eduardo and Companions, and nobody will know who you are. And we're sitting there laughing, and everybody else, though, in this audience is non-Catholic. So they're like, what is he talking about? But anyway, that memory has a lot of great things, though, because like I said, this is we ended up meeting that night, speaking till about 2 a.m, and you had just released this book. And I'm thinking, gosh, it's been 8 years. And a book that's called The Race to Save Our Century. And here we are. I followed your work since then, and it's been great to see what God has used you for, what He's provided for your movements. And gosh, you're one of the few Catholics I know who really has a true pulse on the culture, on the war that we're in, and also I think can offer us some guidance and leadership in a time where we have a great crisis of leadership, especially within the Catholic Church. So I know I just machine gunned a bunch of points out there, but I kind of feel like Jason, because Jason's really high energy and he could go anywhere as well when he starts talking. But let me do this as an introduction for you, Jason, since this is a podcast that's dedicated to Fulton Sheen, who was a prophet for our times. He came up in one of our first conversations and has since. But this is a man who has had an impact on your life. And so I'm interested if you could tell us a little bit about what that impact was and what you see as Fulton Sheen's relevance for what you do and for our times.
Yeah, it's when I look to my apostolate, or starting as a 17-year-old, when I sort of set out to commit my life to serve vulnerable people, especially the child in the womb, but moving beyond that as well. Fulton Sheen, I didn't discover Fulton Sheen until I was a pro-life atheist, and I picked up a copy of Peace of Soul at a Barnes and Noble in like 1998, I believe, maybe even 97. And I have to say, for a man, it's just the worst cover. The cover, forgive me, seems like it should be the cover of a James Martin book or something like that. But it just doesn't seem like the cover of Bishop Fulton Sheen. Once you get to know Bishop Fulton Sheen. But that being said, I'm glad it had the cover it did, because it's probably the right people who need to grab the book. But I grabbed the book, don't know why, and read it and was just blown away. Then I just had to read it, and I was still an atheist. And I just started reading everything I could get my hands on from Bishop Fulton Sheen. But what struck me immediately was the gift that he had. And I mean, this was obvious to me in Peace of Soul, of taking complex ideas, but communicating them so that everyone can understand. And the way that he also linked our personal struggles with the struggles of our community in which we live, and also his courage. When he, a very prominent bishop, who likes to compare himself to Bishop Fulton Sheen, I once went into an event, and I said, you're no Bishop Fulton Sheen, right? He like looked at me struck. And I said, yeah, he goes, well, what do you mean by that? I said, well, Bishop Fulton Sheen made complex ideas simple. And in everything he wrote, he addressed the most serious problems of the day and the most controversial problems of the day. And you take complex things, you may take simple things and make them complex, and you run from the problems of the day. So I don't see where you see yourself as Fulton Sheen at all. And he was taken aback. But that's what struck me, the way that he stood up to communism. In The World's First Love, this the best book. That's the book that helped me as an atheist progressing towards Protestantism. I'm now a Catholic. Really begin to understand the Catholic Church's teachings on the Blessed Mother, but at the same time, he's addressing communism. So I say that when people ask me who are the influences on my work, I say Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, and Bishop Fulton Sheen. I throw in Hannah Arendt and Rene Girard as well. This is a strange group of people. Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Hannah Arendt, Rene Girard, and Fulton Sheen.
Well, okay, well, how can you put them together for us to understand? This would be a good exercise in like a minute or two. How would you summarize how they all work together for what you do?
Well, take Muhammad Ali and Fulton Sheen, for example. They're just so charming. They're just so warm. They love people. They're very theatrical, but it's the theatrics of, and Fulton Sheen, he loved people. Muhammad Ali loved people. They were courageous. And of course, if you look at Hannah Arendt and Fulton Sheen, again, Hannah Arendt was a Jewish philosopher who fled Nazi Germany, but was very courageous, independent thinker, fearless. And so you may look at that group and say they don't have much in common, but I really think the one thing they all have in common is their thoughtlessness to themselves and their courage in addressing problems. Now you look at, why would you say someone's going, what in the heck? I'm watching a Catholic show and this guy's talking about Malcolm X. Something that really I admired early on about Malcolm X, and he died, in the middle of his progress away from what is a cult, the Nation of Islam, and it was kind of a mimetic rival to white supremacy, right? Because you had Malcolm X, the Nation of Islam has a very bizarre theology, but it memes white supremacy and it's black supremacy. He had moved away from that, but his father was murdered by a very radical offshoot of the Ku Klux Klan. He was a young man. He was pulled across trolley tracks actually, and cut in half. And you could say that was the inciting incident of his rage. So that's sort of why I have always identified with Malcolm X is my apostolate began when my high school girlfriend's father beat her up while I was in basic training and took her to get a forced third trimester abortion. And so that sort of pushed me forward. And when I read that Malcolm X said Plymouth Rock I didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on me, talking about the Klan killing his father. I felt the abortion issue landed on me. And so sort of that internal hostility that I had as a young man that sort of pushed me forward as a young pro-life atheist. And that's when I really looked to, of all things, Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. Muhammad Ali to me was a model because he was so charming, so triumphalistic in how he communicated. And that's what you see in Fulton Sheen. Before the fall of Father Karapi, when I didn't like him, and I would tell my wife, like, get his CDs out of my car. And she would say, well, what's wrong with Father Karapi? I said, listening to him is like listening to my dad on a report card day. But I go, put on Fulton Sheen. It's like your uncle who's a little tipsy at an evening dinner party. Listen to Fulton Sheen. I don't need a gruff father lecturing me at the dinner table about my grades. But that's what I would see in common between um, Fulton Sheen and um, who are we just talking about?
Well, Malcolm X and
Malcolm
Muhammad
X.
Ali.
Now, Rene Girard, you would say, okay, well, Rene Girard's the French anthropologist, the Catholic anthropologist, who really helped exemplify for me, help me understand um, what solidarity really is, what it means to be in solidarity with the vulnerable. Fulton Sheen, if you remember well, of course you remember, I'm talking to the expert, but his rosary for missions, he never forgot the poor. He never forgot China. He never forgot Africa. All of the money he made from his books and his TV shows, I believe, went to missions, which, by the way, corresponds with Paul's letters, where I think 70% of the time when Paul says to tithe, it's to the persecuted church. He did this. His heart was with the persecuted church. His heart would be breaking today, knowing that there are 7 bishops who have been disappeared by the Communist Party, the CCP in China, and the hierarchy of the church has been silent. The prominent Catholic Jimmy layman from Hong Kong, Jimmy Lai, is languishing in a prison and may die in prison. What's happening to the church in China, I know would break Bishop Fulton Sheen's heart. Bishop Fulton Sheen had a special place in his heart for China, as I do. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a strange group, but I really didn't discover Fulton Sheen until my late 20s. I didn't become Catholic until my early 30s. And I'm so glad I reached up and grabbed that piece of soul. And it was through Fulton Sheen, I believe, because quickly thereafter I started reading Chesterton and Belloc. And I don't know really how I came across them. I think maybe Fulton Sheen talked about them in one of his early books that I read. And so I'm so grateful that as an atheist, sort of hit the wall. I was an Ayn Rand objectivist, hit the wall and was looking at theism or nihilism as the only options and not wanting to choose either, definitely not wanting to be a Christian, and definitely not a Catholic. And while I was sort of staring at the abyss, I read Fulton Sheen's Piece of Soul, and I believe it was Fulton Sheen that pushed me toward Chesterton and Belloc, and then eventually, not that long after, 4 or 5 years later, I became Catholic.
Wow. And what year was that?
August 6, 2003, so I'm coming up on my 20th.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a fascinating story that you have. You've referenced a number of times you were a pro-life atheist, and people are probably wondering, well, what's that all about? And that's a story unto itself. But why don't you just give him the 2-minute version condensed? Because I think I've heard your story a number of times, and it's really powerful, and it does give a context because everything that you're doing flows from that, from movie to movement, Vulnerable People Project, and then another one, Hero, and I forget what the acronym is for that.
They're all actually human rights education and relief organization is Hero,
Okay.
and then everything else are projects of Hero or programs.
Mm-hmm.
But because I make movies, I want you to eat popcorn and drink a big sugar soda and shove candy in your face and not think of genocide.
Mm-hmm.
So we sort of keep like the Vulnerable People Project and Movie to Movement distinct. People do probably think they're different organizations usually, but no, I just have one organization, and our mission is to defend the vulnerable from violence by promoting human dignity and inspiring solidarity. The idea for the organization came when I was a young atheist. After my high school girlfriend had the forced abortion, I became really committed to fighting abortion as a 17-year-old soldier. But because I wasn't raised in the church and I wasn't raised in a political family, I didn't know anything about politics or religion, or I didn't know that the pro-life issue fit within a framework. To me, it was, wow, children are exposed to violence, and I want to protect children. When I was an atheist, and people would always say, how are you a pro-life atheist? I would get so offended, especially when pro-life Christians would say this to me. I'm like, would it surprise you I'm against kidnapping and stealing candy bars as well? They'd say, well, that's different. I'd say, oh, you're not pro-life. I see you actually don't understand the abortion issue. So to me, the one thing, the grace that I think God gave me as a very young person was really understanding as self-evident the beauty of the human person. Like, I was obsessed. Some kids are obsessed with dinosaurs. Some kids are obsessed with trains. I was mesmerized by human beings. I would cut school and go to this little hot dog stand. I'm from a suburb on the south side of Chicago, near South Side. And I would hop the thing and take the train, go to this hot dog stand. And I would love waiting for people to get off of work or go to work, depending on the time of the day. And I would just sit there and just for an hour and a half, I would be so sad when it was sort of the end of the rush. And the mass of humanity would become to a trickle. And I would just sit there and I would think weird thoughts. And this is a weird kid. This is a 9-year-old kid who ditched school. And I would look at all the people, but then I would think, who built that viaduct? Who brought who mixed the concrete? Who chopped down the trees? What year was it? Oh, it says 1922 on the bridge. Wow. And who built the tracks for the trains that brought, the lumber to the work site? Where were they from? Where were they immigrants from? I wonder if any of the people I saw getting off the train are their descendants. And I would just be mesmerized, at the human person and the interconnectedness of the human family. Something I had is sort of self-evident. And that's why Ayn Rand, an atheist novelist and philosopher who fled the Bolsheviks and moved to the United States and became a writer, famously Atlas Shrugged and Fountainhead. What appealed to, I read her in the 8th grade, and I remember reading Anthem and We the Living and all of her novels, and Kurt Vonnegut's Harrison Bergeron. And so they sort of, Ayn Rand showed this exalted vision of the human person, and she was an atheist. So to me, strangely, the one thinker that I tripped across as a young person that communicated a vision of the human person as I saw them was Ayn Rand. But eventually her anthropology I knew was lacking. In fact, when I graduated college, I wrote 3 goals I wanted to do in my life. And one of them was to develop a metaphysics, anthropology, and ethics that supported the vision of the human person that Ayn Rand expressed and that I saw as self-evident, but I couldn't find without an appeal to revealed religious truth. At the same time, it was self-evident. So I see something as self-evident, but I can't find a way to support the inviolable dignity of the human person without an appeal to revelation. Sartre and Nietzsche and Freud and Camus did a good job of sort of convincing me of this. And it wasn't a happy place because I was a 20-something in Hawaii. You can imagine I was anti-abortion, but that was about as far as my ethics went when it came to sexuality. And I wasn't interested in going any further than that. So yeah, that's how I made my journey from a pro-life atheist to a Catholic.
It's really interesting because you're talking about how eventually revelation comes into your whole vision of the whole person, and of course just the vision of life and culture. It makes me think of this one quote of Sheen that I like, and he says, "Only those who live by faith really know what is happening in the world. The great masses without faith are unconscious of the destructive processes going on because they have lost the vision of the heights from which they have fallen." And I think this is a big issue today because you have, to quote, I just listened to it was an interview that involved Steve Bannon, somebody you know well. And he was talking about how the war that we're in today, one, it is a war. People need to actually acknowledge that. And he said it's more important than 1776, the Civil War, the Great Depression, World War I, World War II. Like, this is it. Like, this is the culmination. And very much kind of a paraphrase of what Sheen said, and even John Paul II had said, as far as we're in this catastrophic contest between the mystical body of Christ and the mystical body of Antichrist is now coming to a head. And Sheen said that 80 years ago. The whole thing of so much of the conversations of people trying to understand what is going on in the world, or to use the language of Chesterton in one of his books, what's wrong with the world, they kind of stay at a geopolitical level. And it's sort of like this gang against that gang, or it's a paradigm of a left versus a right and conservative versus liberal. And somehow things will work itself out that way. But anybody who's involved, like Sheen said, who has an element of faith, knows that this is a battle of good and evil. And even Catholics miss this in many ways. Like very few people seem to understand what this war is that we're fighting on an ideological, philosophical, cultural level. Sheen would call it the revolution underneath the war. Wars will go on forever if you don't solve the revolution of the philosophies and ideologies of battle. With all of your reflection on this, combined with all of your activism in this, what conclusions have you come to that is important for people to understand of what is the nature of the war that we're in? And then we can talk about a little bit shortly of what should we be doing about it, because a lot of people get worked up and they put their energy into the wrong things. Like how would you describe this? What Steve Bannon was talking about?
Yeah, something I thought about even as an atheist is how should I use my time and how should I order my life in a way that's useful. But again, I wasn't a Christian. I didn't know what that meant. And in fact, writing my book, The Race to Save Our Century, I started that book in 1996, and I wanted to finish it by 99. It was going to be sort of like an atheist manifesto, like a libertarian manifesto. But in writing that book, initially it led to me becoming Catholic. Then I reworked my timeline and said, I want to publish it on the 100th anniversary of World War I. And that's what we did. So for me, when you look at the apostolic life, like what are we to do? It can be very confusing. We are in the midst of the war of the mystical body of Christ and the mystical body of Antichrist. But where is the battle lines drawn? The battle line is drawn through the heart of vulnerable people in our communities, right? We are immolate the mystical body of Antichrist seeks to destroy and devour those who are vulnerable, the elderly, the child in the womb, ethnic and religious minorities on the other side of the world. And so when you even look at Fulton Sheen's courageous work, I'll give you an example. I'm sure this is a little unorthodox, my approach to Sheen, and a lot of people may be hearing things for the first time that are going to jar them. But one of the things that most moved me about Fulton Sheen was, I believe it was in September of 1945, Monsignor Sheen at Catholic University gave 2 lectures in which he condemned the United States for dropping atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And he said that this is the moment in which there will be no limits for the use of violence in the United States. Unbelievable. In fact, he was saying, Mother Teresa is quoted as saying, I don't know if it's true, but it's legend, that she said that the fruit of abortion is nuclear war. But what Fulton Sheen said in September of 1945, imagine, my grandfather was still deployed in the Pacific. All these families had young men all over the world, and this ended and shortened the war. But Fulton Sheen said it was an intrinsically immoral act that will obliterate the lines of the use of violence. And so Fulton Sheen saw how dropping atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima would bring the war to the womb of women in the United States of America. And so then what can we do? What should we do as Catholics? And there's the seamless garment that came out of Chicago, which is really repulsive, that it takes the child in the womb and submerges the child in the womb in a sea of prudential issues. Midnight basketball, what should minimum wage be? What should teachers be paid? It's absurd. And it's really dehumanizes the child in the womb. And it's sad because there is an authentic, consistent ethic of life that links Nigerian Catholic schoolgirls who are being targeted by Boko Haram and a young woman in New York City who's walking into a Planned Parenthood. There is a line that connects them. And so what is the Catholic apostolate at this moment? And maybe it was always, but to me, it seems very clear, at least for me, what I want to do is I want to stand with those who are being obliterated, who are being immolated, who are being crushed, who are being destroyed. And Rene Girard said, I'm paraphrasing here, that the catacon is the Christian standing with the vulnerable. And that when the last Christian becomes a victimist, our Lord will return. Now, what he means by that, and I'm boiling down and synthesizing, but what he's saying is that victimism is feigning concern for the vulnerable for wealth, power, or prestige. This is the Satan's trick. And so you put on your Ukraine flag and you put on your rainbow flag and you go to Starbucks on Trans Latte Day and you get 2 lattes and you feel like you're standing with the vulnerable. You go right on to Mass for a Eucharistic minister. We all know these people. And it's social justice, junk food, and poison. What we really need to do is stand with the J6 defendants. We need to stand with Catholics in Nigeria. We need to stand with Jimmy Lai. We need to stand with those that the world is scattered from, that the world is throwing rocks at. That's what we need. It's very easy to know where to be as a Catholic, no matter where you are and wherever you are in place or time. It's where you see rocks going, you are supposed to go stand next to the person they're throwing rocks at. That is, to me, when we look at this war between Christ and Antichrist, and it really is a war that revolves around the world of vulnerability, because the mystical body of Antichrist is running a victims Olympics. And Rene Girard actually wrote this in the 90s. He talked about the victimist Olympics, where we are all seeing ourselves as vulnerable. And for example, I was just on Epoch Times this week, did an interview. Somebody from a woke tribe in America was so upset at my podcast or my interview on Epoch Times, she wrote in the comments, because I was talking about Uyghur slaves, 3 million Uyghur slaves being worked to death, having their organs harvested, being murdered. Was talking about Christians in Nigeria, talking about Christians in Iraq and Syria, Lebanon, and not talking about her little particular problem. So see, that's right there is the mystical body of Antichrist showed up right there in the comment box. That this woman, and we see this in the Catholic Church, especially in the Catholic left, I say that they have what I call the preferential option for myself. Whenever you look at whatever issues they're advocating for some marginalized community, somehow they're the marginalized community they're advocating for. They always happen to be, they always happen to be the center of the world, the universe. The Catholic architecture, Catholic social teaching is an architecture, when faithfully and honestly adhered to, of truly vulnerable communities that puts demands on us. But it can be perverted into which it puts demands on others to serve us. And I think that right there is where you see the difference between the body of Christ and Antichrist. When it's, what are the demands put on me to serve others? What are your obligations to serve me? And that right there is the clear divide. So what should we do is radically order ourselves to serve the vulnerable. And many times you may be suffering with terminal illness or a severe disability or depression. All of these things. Then what we do is, when we are truly the vulnerable, is we're gracious and grateful and cooperating with others to help us. And all of us will have moments in our life. Maybe it's just when we're born and as we get old, but most of us will have times in between where we have moments of extreme vulnerability as well. But if you're an American Catholic walking around thinking you're the most tragic case on earth, you're a narcissist with real problems, and you've really probably been captured by the enemy, and you've lacked the ability to see real suffering that surrounds all of us.
Yeah, I think that spirit of narcissism is really at the heart of pretty much everything. I come across that with a lot of Catholics and as well, and it's really interesting though, because there's. I remember it was something that Fulton Sheen had said. He's like, one of the greatest remedies for human anxiety is to find your neighbor. And that's in his way to happiness. And, he gave this story about a man who was, or these 2 men and a Sherpa. They were hiking up in the mountains, and it was snow. And then a blizzard came in. One of the guys got left behind. and then they realize, oh gosh, it's the Sherpa. And so these two guys are like in this kind of warming a little bit in this cave of separated from the elements. One of them said, well, if we go out there, we're going to die. So I'm going to stay here. And the other one says, I can't just leave him there. I need to go out and go get him. He went out in the elements, and the physical exertion that he was engaged in to find the man, he did find him. He was still alive. And then he brought him back and was able to warm him up. By the time he came back, the guy who did nothing froze to death. And so you can see there's lots of levels of meaning to that, I think, in everything today. And that everything in our culture is so much just turning inward. And I think that for me, it's interesting because I see the battle on kind of three levels. You have the symptoms, which we're all, I shouldn't say we are all aware of, but you can see them. The vulnerable people, the people that you meet all around the world. You're talking about the Uyghurs. You're talking about those who are suffering in like Nigeria. I think I saw a statistic that was like 50,000, I think, have been martyred already in that area. This was just a couple of days ago. And then you have the other level of the philosophies underneath that is leading the world and people in power to do these things. And then you have the third level that if these things aren't rectified, you end up with something kinetic to resolve it. And it's a frustrating thing because it seems like you don't hear enough about all three of them. I mean, the third one, I hope we don't have. I mean, actually, I shouldn't say that. We hear a lot about the third one. Everybody wants war, it seems. All these people in power want war. But what about, like, how do we do a both and? Because it's like you look at Saint Teresa of Calcutta, and she's always with the poor. And then you have also, well, how do we work to prevent that situation from happening? And we kind of seem to not address that adequately. Or the social justice warriors take it on in a false sense, and it goes nowhere. But how do we, because it ties into, I think, the bigger pictures of the war that we're in and these two sides of one, which is completely transhumanistic now, a World Economic Forum, and you really look at their agenda, what they're really saying. There's no room in that world, not just for the poor and the vulnerable. There's no room for you. There's no room for me. It's just this scientific, technocratic elite that's anti-God, anti-human, anti-family, anti-gender, all of these things. And like Noah, Yuval Noah Harari says, well, in the end, we will be like God. And he's like their, philosophical oracle, but he meant exactly what he said. Like, we are at that point. They really believe they're at this point where they can merge humanity and robotics and come up with like a, what was his Deus Homo is, I think, his latest book.
Deus, yeah.
Homo Deus. And it's like we're battling that while we're also attending to all the symptoms and the damage that they're causing by design. How do we fight this war? You know what I'm saying? Because it's like somebody has to, it's like in the end, the ring of fire has to get thrown into Mordor while the effects of it are playing out and people are fighting these other wars and things. But it's like, how do, what do you see as where we need to focus our effort on that front? Because it seems very powerful. It's where all the money is concentrated, the power. It's more organized than the forces of good, even though they'll implode eventually.
Chesterton says in The Ballad of the White Horse, we have wars we hardly win and souls we hardly save. But we save them and we win the wars, which is always hardly. And he talks about how for those who drink the blood of Christ, the skies always seem dark. But the pagans are looking to the stars and they only move when they think they have sure victory. But in the end, they lose. So I don't think everyone wants to do everything. I guess all of us have the struggle of staying in the state of grace, wrestling with our faith, caring for our family. Many of us are addled, we're not called out to live in the streets with the poor or directly support Christians in Nigeria. But we're called to remember them. We're called to pray for them. We're called to tithe. And, what's great about the Christian vocation is we're called to love God and love our neighbor. And you can take that in literally an infinite directions. So there's somebody watching this right now who's struggling with severe depression, someone else who just lost their spouse and can't even get out of bed, and someone else has just found out that they've got stage 4 cancer. So we have to fight the battles we have to fight. Someone else has a child that's left the faith or is suffering with gender dysphoria. And so that's going to take all of our time and energy, and we really have to care for those closest to us. So what I'd say is what we should do every day is just we're called to love God and love our neighbor. We have to look at our station in life, our vocation, and do that. It's my favorite play is Cyrano de Bergerac, and there's this this guy that owns a bakery, and he goes bankrupt because he loves the theater so much, but he didn't realize he was an artist and he was the best baker in all of Paris. But he was so in love with the theater that he went bankrupt supporting the theater and continually giving money to playwrights and actors. We don't want to be like that. We need to know what it is that we're called to do. And how can I do that? I say, how can I leverage myself to serve my neighbor in a way that honors God? You talked about transhumanism. The battle is all around anthropology. Mm-hmm. The battle is on the nature of the human person. And we can all do that right where we are, treating human beings how they deserve to be treated, which is really hard, because we all have neighbors and they're not all great. And so we all have the opportunity every day to exemplify the truth about human dignity, to tithe, to be involved in our parish, to be involved in apostolates that we feel called to. And no, we're not all called. Even like with my work, we've delivered 2 million meals since Christmas Eve across Afghanistan. And it may sound impressive. Million's a big number, 2 million meals across a country like Afghanistan. But you have 20 million people starving to death. And maybe we kept 30,000 people alive this winter. That's a lot of people. But when you have 20 million more on the verge of starvation, 6 million facing very severe starvation, it could feel like, what have I done? It hasn't meant anything. But what I know we're doing is a Catholic apostolate, maybe the only organization from the West operating in every corner of Afghanistan. What we're doing is we're exemplifying the truth about the human person. Hopefully we're inspiring others to solidarity. And this is something we can all do right in our own neighborhoods, in our own families, and in our parish communities.
As I mentioned in the introduction, you've done a lot of work with film production, and there's always been a pro-life, pro-human message to that. One of the short films that you made, which I didn't mention before, you have a number of short films, is my favorite one is Crescendo. And I highly recommend everybody here go check it out. I think you can click out to it on movie2movement.com, right?
You can put it in YouTube, put Crescendo short movie. It's German. There's a few of them. It's in German. You'll know.
Right. Okay. And when not knowing anything about it when you first mentioned it, it was I immediately picked out the Fulton Sheen reference in there. I don't want to spoil it, but I was listening and I was like, "Oh my gosh! Like somebody nailed this." And
that was me.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
That was me.
and so I won't spoil it, but it has to do with.
I can give you the line. We won't spoil it, but we just his line important notes that when Adam and Eve fell, discord entered, and God could have destroyed humanity or created a new symphony. And so I was sitting over the writer's shoulder, and I gave him these 2 lines from C.S. Lewis and Sheen that we kind of merged and we put into the screenplay. And by the way, the reason that was important for me to put that in there is the idea for this movie came to me from Fulton Sheen, where basically we made a film about a true story that Fulton Sheen would use when he gave speeches or homilies on abortion. And so this movie, again, exists because of Fulton Sheen. The other Fulton Sheen short film we want to make is the story of the little Chinese girl receiving communion. That's in the queue of films that we want to get to.
That would
So,
be
yeah.
very, very powerful. I use that story all the time when I'm talking about him in his holy hour. And yeah, it's a very powerful story. I'm trying to figure out which version that I've read is more accurate, than the others. But the gist of the story is so powerful with this little girl. I hope you do it. Is that something that is in the docket?
Yeah, it's maybe 24 months away. We're doing 2 short films this year.
Okay.
I rewrote O. Henry's Gift of the Magi, and I made it contemporary. It's a Christmas film set in Hawaii around 2 homeless tweens. And then I took my writing partner, John Zmirak, and I took A Clean, Well-Lit Place, some facts around Ernest Hemingway's life, and by the way, if I'm a little slow today, I quit coffee 3 days ago, and I have a blinding headache. But we took A Clean, Well-Lit Place and Hills Like White Elephants together with some facts around Ernest Hemingway's life, and we made it into one movie. So that's next on the list.
Okay.
We also we're going to be hopefully doing a documentary on a startling true story on assisted suicide euthanasia that happened recently in the United States. So our work in Afghanistan has really pushed my movie work to the back burner. But at Vulnerable People Project, we have something called the Olive Grove. And it's where we create new organizations to address problems that need a permanent organization to focus on them. So VPP's work in Afghanistan will hopefully be, we'll always be involved in a leadership role and an advisory and funding capacity. But a lot of Afghans that we rescued they're very smart, very capable. We're building an organization around them, Hope for All Afghanistan, that will stay permanently engaged in Afghanistan. This will free us up more to increase our work in Nigeria, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Yemen through VPP, and then kind of free me up because I've been spearheading our work in Afghanistan for a year and almost 2 years now, to get back to what I need to be doing, which is making movies.
What movies would you recommend right now for those who are looking for some real inspiration in these dark times?
Nefarious.
I was about to say there's the 2 Exorcist movies that just came out. Well, not
I'm going
Exorcist,
to see Pope's Exorcist today, right after here. I'm going to go see Pope's Exorcist today with one of my boys. I went to see Nefarious the other day, and it's tremendous.
Is it as good as they say?
It is as good as they say.
Okay.
100%. It's as good as they'd say. Also, today is the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising. So, especially if you're a homeschool parent but maybe together with your family, 2 movies you could watch one is my short film, Sing a Little Louder.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is Jojo Rabbit by Taika Waititi. It's a powerful film about a little boy who was in the Hitler Youth, and his imaginary best friend is Hitler. Sounds absurd, but the movie is very powerful. And I think my children have watched it 5 different times on movie night. So what do you guys want to watch? It's like Jojo Rabbit. They ask for every time.
Interesting.
So I've given you a movie at the theaters, and then 2 you could watch at home.
Awesome.
Oh, Wing and a Prayer. I think it's called Wing and a Prayer. That was
Okay.
our last movie night film that we watched with the kids. Stars Dennis Quaid. Oh, and
my wife just saw that. She
it's
said
really good.
Yeah, she said it was really good.
So I'm going to give you 2 big heads up.
Okay.
There's a movie on Mother Cabrini I had it
Mm-hmm.
a privilege to screen, and it's literally the best movie I've ever seen, period. I would put it up there with Casablanca, and as filmmaking goes, Titanic. It's visually spectacular. Yeah, the acting is unbelievable. The script is perfect. It's a $40 million feature film on Mother Cabrini. Hopefully it'll be in theaters this year. Next year, I already saw it. The Reagan movie starring Dennis Quaid as Reagan is awesome. That'll be coming out next February. And then there's a cartoon, a big budget animated film on St. Maximilian Kolbe called Max and Me. So
He's one of my favorites.
yeah, there's some great films coming out. And and I just went to the theater to see Nefarious. And my friend Steve Dace wrote it. In fact, on my podcast on the Jason Jones Show, I interviewed Steve. It's coming out tomorrow. But Steve Dace is a great guy. He wrote the book that became the movie. And I went to the theater to see it. And every parking, as a filmmaker, I was very happy to see every parking stall in this big movie theater complex was full. So it seems like people are going back to the movies.
And they're looking for the right ones as well. So that's they need that. I heard that it's the best portrayal of Satan ever done. that was one of the reviews I saw. Yes, for Nefarious.
So look, two guys, Chuck and Carrie, that did it, man, they're really good filmmakers, and they're really as a filmmaker myself, I pay attention to budget and they just are really good at finding sensible budgets and then delivering great films. And Unplanned was an amazing film, but like say Unplanned was here in artistic quality, Nefarious is here. But it's just genius. And I mean and I'm not just talking about the script. I'm talking about the filmmaking process. You could see how they made a film that looks like a $40 million film on a much lower budget. And it's a beautiful work of filmmaking. And they're two Catholic guys. You should get them on the show. I could probably introduce you to them. They're two great guys.
I'd love to have them on the show. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's do that afterward. Well, as we wrap up here, I mean, I could talk forever, but I know you're a busy man, and you've got as you just said, you've got a pounding headache. So I want to really honor that as far as get some rest, hydrate.
Coffee for you. I was like, I should probably drink coffee for this interview. I'm like, no, I made it 3 days.
Well, if I was going to say, today I'm beginning another 3-day water fast, strictly water. So, been there a little bit, and I'm a heavy coffee drinker as well. So it's you just have to pound through it.
Are you eating on these? Is it just drinking water?
It's just water. It's a full reset of everything of my body. For Holy Wife and I did a 4.5-day one. Thank God she was doing it with me, because that was we did it at the beginning of Lent. That was the first time I ever did that. Then at the from Tuesday of Holy Week to the vigil was just water. And I was like, if you ever want to lose 12 pounds really fast and make it, that's a good way to do it. Spiritually, obviously, it was powerful. But the second and fourth days were hard. The first and the third, the third day I felt like I had a lot of energy. Then the fourth day was, dear God, please help me to make it, to the vigil. And we kind of weaned off with it.
Fatigue or the coffee headaches?
Mm-hmm.
What was the hard part?
Whenever you have any downtime, you think about it. When you're busy, I just found that I didn't. And before I knew it, it was 5 o'clock. So the evenings were always the hardest, like after 7 o'clock, which is when I try not to eat anyway. But on those days, you're like, oh, maybe just a little bit of that, just to get my metabolism going. But no, it really does shed all of these damaged cells and stuff that we have. I mean, fasting has so many benefits on every level. And then I kind of undid it during Easter week, so I'm resetting that now. Yeah. So anyway, so in it with your brother, but the headaches, they paralyze me. I can't do anything. I could be sick and all those other things, and I can function, but a headache, it does paralyze me. So I feel for you.
I've been traveling so much, and I really abused coffee. Like I just spent 6 weeks in Europe and the Middle East, and I was like, man, I've been abusing coffee. I'm like, I just have to give coffee up. I'm sure my cortisol levels are through the roof, and so I'm like, I'm just gonna purge. I think you have inspired me. I'm gonna try to do a 72-hour fast next week.
You can do it.
I do it.
You can do it. So
I've done it before, and you're right. You feel great. You lost 12 pounds in 3 days?
Yeah, well, 4 days. Yeah, but it was, I didn't think, I didn't think I was going to lose that much, but I did. I was shocked. So, um, yeah, well, keep up. Oh, I'll be praying for you. This is what day is it for you?
This is the third day, so the headache should
Oh,
end today. Right?
it should. But I mean, just drink extra water, you know?
I've been doing a gallon of water a day,
Okay.
and I think that's helped. I didn't actually have headaches really until today,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but
And,
coffee is my
and the
vice.
key, because if you're just doing water, then the key is actually how you break it. Don't just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a cup of coffee. Or like, your whole body right now is resetting itself. It's incredible to think about that. There's a neat program actually with Chris Hemsworth. I don't know if you saw that, called Limitless. It's actually really cool. You should check it out.
Yeah, I saw the commercial for it, and I
It
thought
was really good,
he's a pro-life Christian, right?
as far as I know, but I don't know enough about him. He's not. I don't know how deep his faith is, because they got into some things in there as far as like the end of life things, and it was interesting. But I thought it was a great series. I did have to bite the bullet and give Disney a little bit of money to watch it. But it was good. But they take you through a lot of, I love it too, because it's a pro-human show in the right way of, they look at all these questions that battle with, from our health to purpose and other things like that. And it seemed pretty authentic to me how he dealt with them. And so anyway, they started with this one, was the fasting and the experience that he went through. And, of course, he's got millions of dollars, so he can install an ice tub for the rest of his life, that he's going to do all these things. But anyway, but you learn a lot.
We all do things for the rest of our life, right?
Yeah, I know.
Chris Hemsworth in a year, he's going to be a little overweight, but we do our best, right? We do our best.
Well, we do. And the other thing that gives me strength, seriously, is a reminder that we are living in a time at war. Like, we have to believe that. And before I give you the final word, because I'd like you to be able to promote what you would like and have people know how they can follow you and support you. When I was shocked to actually come across this clip. This was Sheen during World War II, when he was talking about the importance of the holy hour. And at this time, he called, it wasn't just a Catholic thing. He says, I call on Catholics, Protestants, and Jews to make the hour. We all share certain things in common, and we can all make it. Protestants and Jews can make the hour at home, but we Catholics should try to make the hour every day in our churches where Jesus is present. And he says, too, the emphasis is given on those who are out there on the battlefront out there, but not enough on the home front. Because people say, well, what can I do? He says, this is one thing everybody can. And he said must do, because we're battling not just governments and armies. He said if that was the case, the armed forces will take care of that. But we're battling an evil, and an evil that will not listen to us when we are standing or when we are sitting, but when we are on our knees before our Lord, making an hour. And he said this part, that he says, those of us who say it is too hard and I can't do it are not worthy to salute the same flag. And I've never forgotten that. So when I want to get into this, narcissistic tendency of like, oh, woe is me, and like, I remind myself, and I have to admit, and this isn't, like patronizing, but it's the work that you do. It inspires me. I'm thinking my sensitivity to the Uyghurs, those who are suffering. I'm like, I had no idea. Even if I was suffering like on things that I couldn't imagine, like these people, I can't really imagine that's their life, and being forgotten on top of that by so many. Like, I can make it through this next day or whatever it is. And so anyway, just a word on that with Sheen. And Jason, let us tell our viewers how they can follow what you're doing, and how they can support the work that you're doing, so that we can build up the kingdom as it needs to be, put our efforts, our resources into the right places.
Sure. Well, our website is thegreatcampaign.org. And, our mission is to stand with the most vulnerable people in the world when the world has left. So we have the vulnerable parish program where we're securing parishes in Africa, in Nigeria specifically. We're caring for the most vulnerable people in the world, the widows and orphans of our former Afghan allies who were killed in action. Of course, we're the leading organization in the world that's been advocating for the Uyghur. If you want to stand in solidarity with the most vulnerable people in the world when the world is left, go to our website, look at what we do. Right now, we're in the midst of our big campaign for monthly donors. We need to sort of double our monthly income to meet our current needs because Nigeria has become quite the challenge. So our vulnerable parish program has put a big burden on our organization. So it's thegreatcampaign.org. I have a podcast, The Jason Jones Show. I try to be witty and funny and distract you from what we're really up to, which is constantly trying to get out the stories of vulnerable communities. So that's the two best ways to find us.
Great. Well, I hope everybody goes and checks it out, and keep Jason and his family in your prayers. A lot of times we forget about that, what's going on behind the scenes, that the work that, you're part of. This is a military operation when you think about it, the church militant, and the families, they deal with it behind the scenes, and there's sacrifices that are made when you're trying to reach others. And in Jason's case, like the people he's referencing, he's in personal contact with them, and so not to forget that, and to also to continue to pray for these areas. Like in the beginning, Fulton Sheen, he developed the World Mission Rosary. It's something we do every single day with the Fulton Sheen Institute YouTube channel. It's one of the few things we can get on there before we're blocked. But we do have our weekday rosary at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, and we follow the World Mission Rosary. And so we pray
awesome.
each decade. We do, first one's yellow for Asia, and we specifically, I lift up China, North Korea, all those areas, the Uyghurs, all those who are suffering. And then we have the Americas, the second decade, Europe is the third, fourth is Oceania, and fifth is Africa. So we get a chance to really be in solidarity with all of them. And I think, like Jason was saying, into a little bit implying, is that we need to really understand the truth of what's going on in the world, because we're being fed narratives, and those narratives eventually they affect people, making them victims. What's going on in Ukraine, and and so many other places, and things that aren't spoken about. I always tell people, look, if you're hearing it over any like major media, basically the truth is the opposite. but to really think critically, pray, and have hope, because people would be surprised when I tell them that Fulton Sheen was extremely positive and hopeful, and actually saw Russia as being one of the major leaders of evangelizing the world. Communism, yes, went through Russia, but if you look at what they stand for, at least things, I'm not going to get into it much now at all, but if you listen to what they're saying for their reasons, despite whether you're for or against an invasion, there's a lot more to it. They're one of the few places in the world that's rejecting the woke culture. They don't want their culture taken over. They don't want their families taken over. Yes, there's remnants of things of communism, those things, but like it's much different. And so we have to break the paradigms. You got to think above, like Sheen would do. You got to think with the mind of the church, and really think on your own. So there's a lot of hope there. He had great hope even for China, and there is an Our Lady of China. So how these things will work out, I don't know. But in the meantime, like he would say during the time of the Soviet Union, we have to fight. He said, we have to fight to free these people. We have to. And, I know I'm concluding, but Jason, can you give us like a little brief comment on that line when she says we have to fight for these people? Yes, we need to pray for them. But he's like, we have to liberate them. Like, what is that?
Yeah, but we have to liberate, for example, the CCP. We have to liberate the people of the world from like two great adversaries right now, which is woke culture. In many ways, we've become the country that pushes so much evil around the world. And number two, the CCP. We need to liberate the world from the CCP. The CCP must be defeated. And I think those are really kind of the same enemy. They're tied at the hip. So if we can defeat the CCP, we can defeat the woke culture. Mm-hmm. And our co-religionists are being brutalized across China right now. And we just found out there's a Chinese prisons and courtrooms and jails all across the United States and the foreign country. Our adversary has jails and courtrooms all across and police stations all across the United States. The FBI has just revealed this. So
I saw that.
yeah. So it's our job as Catholics to do that. And, it's like the work I do, it's not a military operation. Like, we go where the military can't even go. We go where intelligence agencies can't even go. We operate around the world because that's where the church is. So people are sometimes baffled at how we can distribute food across Afghanistan or other countries that we work in. They're so confused. And it's the church. It's the mystical body of Christ. And this is the work of the church militant.
So Jason's like the Monsignor O'Flaherty of Afghanistan and other places, probably. Have you seen the Scarlet and the Black?
Yeah, maybe Romigas. I don't know.
No, but, well, once again, Jason, what's the website they need to go to help support you?
thegreatcampaign.org.
thegreatcampaign.org. Everybody, please go there, support what Jason and the whole movement is doing there. Thinking of just imagine if that was your family that was being affected. And you know what? It very well may be if we don't get our act together really soon. Like Sheen said, communism comes in like a vulture, like a scavenger over decaying civilizations. And the last step is the complete moral collapse. And we're basically there. So think about your family, and then think about your family has, you could say, is replicated throughout the world. Same people, same loves, same desires, same dreams. And so thank you, Jason, for all that you're doing. And you are certainly in our prayers.
Thank you, brother. God bless you.
All right. God bless you. Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Catholic Patriot. I really hope you enjoyed this time with Jason. He is one inspiring man who I think is also a true leader. And the work that he has done, is doing right now, is reaching millions of people around the world. So please go to the links that you've seen in the podcast. Check out the Jason Jones Show podcast. And I fully endorse what he is doing to reach the most vulnerable people in the world. And so we also need your help as well. And in order for us to reach millions of people, I am asking on behalf of all of them that you please support our work. And you can do so very easily simply by going to fultonsheenmovement.com/give. And you can find a way to give your donation there. For those who are living in the United States, those donations are tax deductible. And we have lots of projects that are in the pipeline. Of course, the number one thing is to have Fulton Sheen beatified this year in 2023. We need a collective voice to do that. We need resources to be able to reach media outlets and Catholic influencers and leaders throughout not only the United States, but throughout the world. And then beyond that, it's going to be showing the importance of the prophetic wisdom of Fulton Sheen as the man who I believe God has chosen to really be the leader for our times. Bishops, our priests, for us laity. He is the one who speaks to all peoples, and the more he is influential in our own lives, we're going to find ourselves really making dramatic impact on the world, and beginning in our own families. So please go to fultonsheenmovement.com/give and support our work today. It's been such an honor having you as our audience for our podcast, and I can't wait to see you on the next episode. God bless you.
Right is right if nobody is right. Wrong is wrong if everybody is wrong. And believe me, in this error-infested world, what we really need is a church and an authority that is right not when the world is right, but one that is right when the world is wrong.
Never in history has the prayer of the Rosary been more needed to save our families, our countries, and defeat the evils of the world than now. The Fulton Sheen Institute worked closely with the Roman Rosary to develop the most unique, beautiful, and meaningful rosary that was inspired by Fulton Sheen's World Mission Rosary. This special handcrafted rosary continues Sheen's passion to support the mission of the Church to evangelize the entire world. Each decade of the rosary has a different color, which corresponds with a different continent. Yellow for Asia, red for the Americas, white for Europe, blue for the nations of Oceania, and green for Africa. Each Fulton Sheen Aroma Rosary comes with a set of 4 pure essential oil blends that have been chosen for their therapeutic and theological significance. These blends correspond to the 4 mysteries of the Rosary. Simply choose the oil for the mystery of the day, drop a small drop in the palm of your hand, and massage the oil over the surface, being sure to catch the lava beads. You're good to go, and your prayer will linger longer with these beautiful aromatic notes. Every Fulton Sheen Aroma Rosary you purchase supports our mission to fight the battle for the hearts and souls of the Christian family and lead our world back to God. So visit the Fulton Sheen Institute's store and pick up your beautiful Fulton Sheen Aroma Rosary today. Get one for you, your family members, and your close friends, and don't forget your pastor. Thank you so much for your prayers and your support.